All right, are we live? Are we live? Let me know if you can see me. Because it's just a little different with this setup. So give me a hey, yeah, if you can see me, because I can see comments scrolling in and I am thinking that I am live. Yes, yes, yes. Let me know. Yes. Okay. So did I make you wait all that time? This is a little different setup. I'm used to punching that live button myself, but as you know, this is Takeover Tuesday with Sewing Machines Plus, and I am going to be here with you every month. as a guest on the Sewing Machines Plus channels here. So I'm thrilled to be here. Hello, everybody. Let me just say, hey, real quick. We want to get some stitching done here because you all know that I am from Let's Go Sew.com. And if I asked you what you wanted to do today, what would you say? Let's go sew. And yes, my paw is still mending. I won't bore you with all the details, but I did embroider my finger a few weeks ago and had quite a time having to get that piece that was left in out, but it is out now and I am starting to heal. So that's a good thing. Now, the other good thing is it taught me a lesson to teach you. You need to be totally mindful to keep all of your fingers far, far, far away from the needle at all times. Use whatever tools you have in your repertoire to make sure that you don't get anywhere near that needle. And I happen to do it on a 6-needle machine. So those things are super, super powerful. All right. Are you ready for a fun project today? I have a really just a neat little project that I've had a lot of fun with. I've made several of these and I use them as a little centerpiece on the table. You could use it as a candle mat. You could use it as a pad for a vase. You could also use it as a pot holder, trivet rather. However, I'll just give you a little tip. When I make trivets, I a lot of times like to use them for multi-purpose, fancy ones like this. So what I will do is I will just simply take a regular silicone pot holder and I will put it underneath this so that you don't see it. And then this is on top. I do that even when I put a vase of flowers on the table so that I don't have to worry about anything seeping through. So this is done with just 4 circles, and I'm going to walk you through the steps to make this. If you are on my email list, which I encourage you to get on, if you visit me at letsgosew.com, you'll see where you can sign up. This weekend, when I set out my my weekend love note to all of my friends, I will include a link to some additional projects that you can do with a circular sewing attachment. So we are going to be sewing perfect circles today. And when I move over to the machine, I hopefully I can still see your comments, but if not, I'll check back a little bit later. If you have any questions, hold them till the end for me, please. So yes, this is going to be a fun one. And we're going to start out with 4 squares of, grab it over here, 4 squares of fabric. And you're going to have fabric A and, a little hard when you're missing a finger, and fabric B. And then very, very important, you're going to need a piece of tearaway stabilizer. So use a light to medium weight, but when you use, when you're sewing on circles, you're sewing around the bias. So you want to keep from having any of that distortion factor. So we're going to start with 6.5-inch squares. We need 4 6.5-inch squares of all of those pieces. Now, I'm going to move over to the machine in just a second, but I want to talk just a little bit about circular sewing options. First of all, I'm going to be using a circular sewing attachment, and I encourage you, no matter what machine you have, I'm only using a straight stitch today, but whatever machine you have, check and see if you have the option for a circular sewing attachment, because that makes all of your circle sewing so easy. There is a variety of different options depending on your machine, but there's also a generic option, and I call it generic, but it's actually made by the folks at Sew Steady, and I have one on order. So again, if you're on my email list, I'll snap some pictures of that. It's probably going to arrive tomorrow or the next day, and that can be used on any machine that has a table that you can use as an extension table. Now, another option, believe it or not, is a thumbtack, and that will work too. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to the machine. I'm going to switch camera real quick, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. All right, let's get that camera switched over. There we go. Hopefully that one's on. Let's see. Should be on. All right, of course I tested all this before, and of course there's always something that goes a little funny. Okay, so you should be able to see that. I'm going to see if I can bring up your comments here. Let's see, let's see, let's see. All right. All righty, so I was hoping I'd be able to see your comments on my second monitor here, but for some reason that's not going. So I'm going to go ahead and just start stitching. So first of all, I've got the circular sewing attachment already attached. Basically, all it is a sliding gauge, and then it also has a pin placement so that you can go ahead and put the pin in the center of your circle, and then you're just sewing around the circle at an even distance on every piece. So this just lifts up, and then this slides into different millimeter settings. I'm using a 6-inch circle today, so I've got it set at 80 millimeters. I think it's 80 millimeters. And if I take my tape measure here, you'll see that from my needle position, where the needle's going to pierce, to the pinpoint position, which is right there, you will see that it is exactly 3 inches. So pay attention to that, because if you are, using this and you're wanting to, double check where your needle position is, your needle might start in the center, your needle might start in the left. Who knows where your needle is? So you want to always make sure that wherever that position is, it is exactly in the position that's going to give you an even distance there. So what do I mean by using a thumbtack? Well, take a look at this pin. All this is holding the fabric in place. So pretend I have nothing here. If I had a simple thumbtack that would look just about like this, only it wouldn't have all this extension here, I could literally tape that to my machine. All I would have to do is make sure that I'm in a perfect parallel spot from my needle over to that 3-inch mark, and my little thumbtack could be taped right there, and my fabric could be stuck right on there. So that's like a really, really frugal way to do it. Maybe not the easiest way, but it certainly works. So you may want to play around with that a little bit. This particular attachment just fits right into a little slot here and then screws in. So it's nice and sturdy, and then it's very easy for me to make all those different circles. Now, I will tell you that every machine varies a little bit as far as the distance that you can stitch. I believe my largest circle with this machine is 10 inches, but you'll see if you, take a look at the pictures that I post this weekend, the Sew Steady option, you can do really big circles with that. So my attachment, of course, is a brother, because I am a brother ambassador. Many of you know that. It not only comes with the attachment itself, it comes with 2 accessory feet. It comes with a braiding foot and a 3-slot cording foot. So take a look at this little sample that I did using both of those feet. So the ribbon went through with the braiding foot, and the cording was done with the 3-slot cording foot. So here's another little thought when it comes to circular stitching. We're going to be stitching just regular straight stitches today, and you can see I've got a satin stitch there. But if you can imagine decorative stitches are a lot of fun. However, there's a big thing you need to think about, and that is you have to start at one point on the circle and you have to end at the same point on the circle. So sometimes your decorative stitches are such that the pattern itself will not meet up or match up perfectly. And yes, there are some technical ways to work around that, but fabric is always a variable, meaning fabric moves. So I haven't found a really successful way to get those decorative stitches to match up perfectly every time. Sometimes they do, because sometimes serendipity is your friend. But if they don't, then simply think about adding accents. Now here I purposefully left my ribbon loose, so I only sewed a half circle, left a tail, half circle, left a tail, and then I tied it in a bow. But you can cover up those little spots with beads, with buttons, with ribbons, with, you know, little doodads. So don't be afraid to stitch out those decorative stitches. Just realize it's not you, it's it, and it can be very difficult to make that you know, match up perfect. And Dorothy, yeah, I see your comment on the screen there. That should be the identical attachment, because you're talking about a twin machine of a brother machine. So yes. And by the way, this attachment fits many brother models. So definitely a good option to look into. All right, so I have started, like I said, with those two pieces of fabric, A and B, and I have got right sides together, and then I just simply have my tearaway stabilizer underneath. Now I'm going to be stitching a 6-inch circle, but I've cut these to be 6.5 inches square so that I have a little bit of breathing room. You can cut them larger if you want to, but just make sure you don't go any smaller than 6.5. And then I'm simply going to find the center. I did that by folding my fabric in half each way, finding that little spot, creasing it, and then I made just a little X with my Chucky pencil. Where did my Chucky pencil go? Where did my Chucky pencil go? How is it that every time you sew, something disappears? All right, I'll just use my pencil here. You can see that X right there in the middle, and that's where my pin is going to go. So I'm going to just simply pop that in, just like that. I'm going to reach over and I'm going to take that point and I'm going to put it right into this hole right there. That's where it attaches. That's where it snaps in. And you may even hear it snap. Now, I will tell you that you can do this with, of course, thicker fabrics. You can even have, you know, batting on your fabric. I've just found that if I use removable stabilizer like the Tearaway, it's a whole lot easier for me to press that circle once it's stitched. If you have a lot of extra thickness here and you're turning that circle right side out, it can be a little bit tricky to, you know, get that raw edge trimmed and then turned out. So if you do go with any kind of batting, just make sure it's really thin and pressed really well. And don't skip the stabilizer. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to lower my presser foot. And there really is pretty much a bit of a technique to this. So your attachment might vary a little bit, but with this one, I found that I like to keep a little bit of pressure on the pin with my finger, because sometimes it'll pop up just a little bit. And then you're going to see what I'm going to do as I stitch here. I'm going to pet the fabric just like that. I'm just going to smooth it out. Again, remember, anytime you're stitching on a circle, you are crossing all of the grain that exists on a piece of fabric, and the grain that goes along the curved edge is the stretchiest. So the stabilizer helps with that a lot, but just smoothing it as you go. I say I'm petting the fabric. We'll keep that nice and flat. You don't want it to pucker up, because then you're going to have a little bubble on your seam. Ooh, I'm a little close there on my seam allowance. So do as I say and not necessarily as I did. Make sure that your center point is marked right in the middle of the fabric there, so you have room, or make sure you cut your squares just a little bit bigger. But I happen to have a ruler that is 6.5 inches for the total width. So that just made it really easy. So you can see I've just crossed over a little bit. Hopefully you can see the stitches there, nice and smooth. I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread. I've got pivot function set up. Now remember, you don't need any special machine for this. Just as long as you've got some way to sew circles, you are going to be good to go. So I've just overlapped that a little bit, and you can see everything matched up perfectly. So I've got a little release button here, right there, and I can take that off. So the next step is going to be to remove the stabilizer. And you want to remove it now, because if you wait until you've trimmed, it's going to be a little bit harder to tear. So you always want nice big pieces to grab onto and tear away. I'm going to pop over and peek at the chat here. Okay, I see everybody's still saying hello. Are you visiting with each other today too? I know we have such a great group of people here. If we had 2 hours, I would have said hi to each and every one of you. We want to make sure we get the show done in an hour's time. So I'm just so thrilled to see so many familiar faces and so many friends here. It's always makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Okay, I'm a warm and fuzzy type, so I'll readily admit that. And it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside when I see. So yes, I can't see the chat right now, but I can actually see the questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put, try to save the big ones for the end, but if they can pop some of them up there for me, that would be great too. I don't know why I can't get the chat to show up. I tried, but it didn't work. So, all right, so now I'm going to trim the excess, and I'm going to only leave 1/8 of an inch of fabric there. If you've ever stitched a circle and tried to turn it right side out, you may know that you're actually turning something bigger into something smaller. So you want to have a really skinny seam allowance there. You only need 1/8 of an inch, as this isn't going to be, worn and pulled and pushed once it's stitched together. So trim that nice and evenly. And I know some people, so I can already read some of your thoughts, possibly. Some people like to use pinking shears for this. And the reason for that is you're actually clipping out the bulk that you get in that wider area as you're trimming. I'm not a big fan of doing that. I know some people even like to do it on garments where they've got curved facings in that. What I find is if you have pinking shears going all the way around, or those little zigzags going all the way around, it can sometimes show on the right side, especially if you have a lighter fabric. So I prefer to just trim and grade that closely. Now, you could, if you wanted to, for extra security, if you were doing some type of project where this was going to get, pushed and pulled around, then you would want to stitch that a second time. But I've shortened my stitch length to 2.0, and that makes it a stronger seam, just with that. So now the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut a slit here. So I'm going to take a pair of small scissors, and the next step is actually going to be me showing you where I measured over, which is a half plus an inch, so 1.5 inches. So I'm going to have to draw a line here. So where my slit has to be between these 2 points. So just make your slit close to the edge of the circle. You want to pull only on one fabric. Now, I've made this really easy by using 2 contrast fabrics. I basically have a solid and a print, and that's what I recommend for this project. Now, I'm actually using a batik. So can we call a batik a solid? I call a batik the other solid, because anytime you're working with a batik print, it is kind of reading in quilters terms. It's actually, let me pull the piece over here and you can see it. It's actually, reading or looks from a distance like it is a solid, and yet it has extra life to it. So I love the kind of the textural look that you get with a batik or any of those kind of, grunge fabrics, whatever you like to use as your alternative. So see, I need just a slit that's about 2 inches, because now I'm going to reach in and I'm going to turn this right side out. So one of my favorite tools for doing this is a little bamboo press. You can actually use this to poke out points, but that rounded edge, you'll see once I get this opened up a little bit, that rounded edge works wonderful for pushing out that seam allowance, because you want to get that all nice and rounded. See how that's just smoothed that out so nicely? I want to get in there and all the way around the circle. Okay, so as is typical, I've already got mine done, so I'll just flip that over, set that aside. All right, and then like I said, the next step is going to, once you're going to sew all 4 of your circles, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to cut the slit, you're going to turn it right side out, you're going to press it so it's nice and smooth, and then you're going to take a ruler and your Chucky pencil or whatever you have, whatever you can find. Let's go ahead and use this red pencil for now. And just to show you where I've already drawn my line, I'm measuring 1.5 inches into the circle, and then I would just draw that line right there. So remember, your slit has to be hidden between that 1.5 inches and that edge. So all the measurements on this are really, really easy. I bet you if you just paid attention, you could make one of these right after we get off the air. So now I'm going to put my 2 polka dot sides together. And again, the better you press your circles, the prettier your finished project's going to be. I'm a little loosey-goosey on that one. And once we put those together, we're going to go ahead then. I'll leave my circular sewing attachment on. I'm just going to slide it over so it's out of the way. We're just going to use a straight stitch. I'm using gray thread today. You can use thread that matches one of the fabrics. You know, gray is a good blender color. And I want to stitch right on that line. Back stitch. Your circles should match pretty good. Just like that. All right, now here's where the beauty starts to form, because the next step is you simply spread this open, and basically what you have are 2 petals. So again, if I'm a little bit better on my circles, they're going to match there very, very nicely. So I've got one set already done. I've got this one done now. The next thing I'm going to do is do the same drawing with 1.5 inches from that edge of the circle. I'm going to go ahead and put it on that right there. Okay, we're working at the same distance. But before I actually stitch these 2 together, which is really going to be the finishing touch, I'm going to go ahead and decoratively stitch on these petals to keep them down. Sure, you could use a straight stitch, but I'm going to switch my thread. I've actually got Kingstar metallic threaded in for my bobbin. And then we'll go ahead and change that for my top thread. So there's my Kingstar. Love Kingstar. You can find this on SewingMachinesPlus.com. This is a Designs and Machine embroidery product, but Sewing Machines Plus carries lots and lots and lots of colors. So again, I did wind a bobbin. Now let me give you a few metallic tips here while I'm doing this. First of all, normally when I use metallic thread, I will use a stand-up spool holder because these are large cones. But I've got my other monitor in the way here today, so I don't have that on. But you know, you can get auxiliary spool holders that will allow you to put it to the back of your machine and then bring it up so that you can use these larger cones and have them stand up, because they're really designed to be coming off the spool from the top as opposed to sideways like we have for just a traditional spool of thread. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is, what needle do you want to use? Well, Kingstar performs really well with a standard embroidery needle. So that's what I have in my machine. If your machine's, you're used to using a uh, metallic needle, then go right ahead. But I don't find it necessary. So now I've gone ahead and just selected a feather stitch on my machine. Very basic kind of decorative stitch. And I'm going to have it tie off for me here. So I just want to stitch down those petals with a pretty stitch. And I'm going to have it just jump over so that it's just towards the outer edge of that little petal. The feather stitch is one of the few stitches that you can actually use your standard presser foot. So I haven't seen that question come in yet, but I am using my standard presser foot. If I were going to be using some other decorative stitches, I would have switched to the decorative stitch foot, which for me is an end foot. And the key with that foot is it has a channel or a groove on the underside. So if you're working with thicker decorative stitches, you always want to make sure that you switch to that stitch. And then I'm just going to pivot. I'm going to go around that other side. And you can already see how pretty that stitch is on those petals. Oh, it's such a beautiful accent. I don't know about you, but I never get tired of seeing what a decorative stitch looks like, because every time it just stands out and shouts, look at me, look at me. I'm so beautiful, look at me. Decorative stitches are really one of the ways you get your money's worth out of your machine, is using them. So be sure to play with them. All right, go ahead and cut that thread. And you can see I've got my pretty petal stitched down. We'll go ahead and trim this little piece here. Get all those threads. So technically, I'm going to bring my other sample in for just a minute to show you. Yes, technically this is reversible, because, on the other side, you're seeing just the, one color. And with the decorative stitches, you're seeing the decorative stitches. So that can be nice, but the top side is where this really shines, because you're getting that look of petal effect. And these can be done in multiples. So you can make as many sets as you want and then keep joining them together to make whatever size. Now, measurements vary a little bit for the size circle, as far as what distance you end up drawing your lines for your straight stitching. So you kind of have to play with that. Basically, I'll just give you an idea. If you were doing that on a different size circle, you want a square to fit inside of one circle when that circle is still open. So if you can kind of picture this, if I was able to measure that so that a square would fit into there perfectly, that would show you where your line needs to be drawn. So you can play around with a piece of paper if you want to, work that mathematical equation out for yourself. And then that way you can make circles of different sizes. But this is just the perfect size for that little, candle mat or little trivet, basically. So that's what it's going to look like in a couple of minutes here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this next one. Same way I did the first one. And again, I want that pretty much to form so that the stitch is right along the edge. Uh-oh, got a little stitch glitch here, so let me fix that. And that's probably my fault, because I am not using my spool pin holder that stands up. So when this gets just a little bit curly-Q here, it will start to spin. So another little tip for decorative stitching, if you're doing it with metallic threads, I'm just going to rethread real quick, is to make sure that you sew a little bit slower. Remember, this thread, even good quality, is a little bit wiry. And because it's wiry, you want to make sure that you give it a chance to kind of relax as it's stitching. Now, for embroidery, I never have any issues with this because the embroidery machines, you know, feed that thread so well. But again, I would normally use that with a feeder that is feeding it from the top. All right, start this again here. And I hope you're enjoying the process. You know, I've got lots and lots and lots of ideas for projects to do along the course of the months that we're going to be together. Love to get your feedback and your comments. You can either, you know, comment here and I'll be going back and reading all those, or, you know, shoot me an email via letsgosew.com. I know that a lot of you like to see the steps stitched out. So I'm pretty much thinking I'd like to do a regular sew along like what we're doing today, pretty much every month, so that you can see how to make the project from start to finish. And in this case, you know, this is obviously something that can be done in just about an hour. And I think that's always a fun way too. Now, if some of the things are a little bit longer, then I'll probably have to do some of the steps first so that we have those, you know, good to go and ready for you to take a look at. But it is really, especially this time of year, I'd love to know how many of you are already getting in gear for gift making. I will tell you that when I went to get fabric for this, obviously I only needed a few squares, but I went ahead and bought I think a third of a yard, and I got all kinds of squares out of that. So think about doing this in multiples and giving it as a gift. You can buy, you know, one of those little battery operated candles and wrap it up as a set. Give it with a, you know, a holiday planter or vase of flowers, anything like that. It's really a nice way to upscale your gift giving, and yet make something quick, easy, and not a whole lot of cost involved either. So, all right, I'm gonna do something I didn't do before, and that is I'm not going to cut my thread. So I'm going to go ahead, instead of using my cutter button, and pull that tail. And I think that's going to make the difference for not getting that tangled up at the very beginning. That might have been my problem. All right. Believe it or not, we are getting near the finish line. So next thing we do is we put, again, right sides together. I've got my 1.5-inch line right here. I'm going to go ahead and just do it with the metallic thread, but normally I would do this with regular thread, but I don't want to do another switcheroo. So I'm just going to go back to straight stitch. And we just need that last seam there. And I could actually sew all of the decorative stitching at one time if I really wanted to, but I wanted to just see more, you know, kind of a methodical way that this is put together so that you can see the steps. Okay, and I'm going to raise that up. All right, I got my iron here. I'm going to see if I can get that ironed really quick, but you see I'm going to open this up just like that. And oh, you know what? I think okay. I think I sewed that the opposite way that I sewed this one. So there's a new little twist on it there that I hadn't thought of. That'll work though. Do you see what I did here before? I sewed the printed side together. Here I sewed it differently. So now I'll just give it a little press. And yes, I do have written instructions for this. It actually came originally from the Brother blog. So maybe if I paid attention to my own instructions, I would have done this a little bit differently. But I will also link to that in the show notes so that you can see if you want to follow that step by step. And just one more. Yeah, Dorothy, you could consider adding batting, but just remember it's a little bit harder to get your circles turned right side out, nice and neat and even if you are adding that batting. So you're just gonna have to work just a little bit harder to get your circles nice and smooth and flat. But it can be done. It can definitely be done. I'm also thinking, it might actually be a good idea if you are using the batting to top stitch along these edges so that you can help flatten that out. That way, if you've got a little bit of extra bulk there, it won't end up, kind of rippling. So, all right. So we got another version here. That's okay. I kind of like this version. I have to remember what I did the first time and then what I did the second time in order to make that work. Now, here's another thought for you, because I wonder how many of you are going to do the same thing I did, and that is do it differently than I said. But, in garment sewing, one of my absolute rules is pin before you stitch. So how many times I've gone and stitched, the wrong facing to the wrong side, or the cuff with the buttonhole facing up. If I would only take the time to pin that first as if it was stitched, then open it up, then you're going to make sure that you don't have any mishaps. So sewing is all about life learning lessons, isn't it though? I mean, every day you learn something new and different. All right, there we are. I've got another super great project. Very quick, very easy, very fun, and very pretty. So I hope that you'll give this one a try. Very, very simple. I'm going to head back over and see if you got any questions for me. Okay, Bridget, before I leave here, this is a circular sewing attachment. So it's just a simple attachment that has a pin that goes into the center of the fabric. So whatever distance you want, you choose half that amount. You set the little gauge. So for today, I set mine at 80, which gave me 3 inches. Show you, I'll refresh and just show you that again. So with my left needle position from the left needle over, right where that pinpoint placement is, that would be where my pin would be. So remember, lots of options for this. Check with Sewing Machines Plus what is available for you and for your machine. This is a little bit of an investment, but you can get the Sew Steady option. That is a strip that attaches to your extension table and then has a little mat and a pin that goes into the mat for a very reasonable price. And that will work again on any machine that has an extension table, like the Sew Steady extension tables, or your extension tables that can be added as an option for your machine if it didn't already come with one. But that allows us to do really neat circles very quick and very easy. All right, I'm moving over, coming back here, and I can't wait to see what some of your thoughts and your questions are so we can visit just a little bit here. Oh, all right, let's see. Whew, Janice has already started and finished several Christmas gifts. Why am I not surprised, Janice? All right, Kathy says she's got something similar. She's going to get out and try it. Gail, I'm glad you like the project. That makes me feel very good. Let's see. Let me scroll in. Teresa is going to give it a try. All right, my local friend Teresa. I'm glad to hear that. Like I said, there are really a lot of different projects that you can do with the circular sewing attachment. Now, Another idea for those of you that maybe have a scanning cut is you could go ahead and cut your circles out on the scan and cut and then just simply stitch them. So the best thing to do if you're going to do that is, again, stabilize the fabric, make sure it doesn't move. I would iron some fusible interfacing to the circle if I was going to do it by cutting it on the scan and cut. And then make sure that as you're stitching that, your edge of your presser foot, if you're using that as your seam guide, or maybe, you know, 1/4 inch foot or something that's going to give you a really accurate seam allowance. Because when you're stitching around this circle piece, if you're stitching around a pre-cut circle, there's no room for forgiveness. You have to be perfect all the way around, or you're not going to get that consistent result. So let's see. The circle cutter. Yeah. Nilda, the Grace circle cutter. That would definitely be a good idea. Just remember what I said about using it as you know, stabilized fabric. By the way, I'd like to know how many of you spritz your cotton before you use it. I always use you know, the best press or some type of light starch on my cotton before I even cut it, because I like to wash my fabric. So that's another little tip that I wanted to share with you today. Okay, I'm using 2 very high contrast fabrics. And how many of you have ever done red and it made the rest of your fabric pink? Happens to the best of us. So I always will make sure that I like to wash all my fabrics before I handle them. That's just me. The main reason I do that is because I want to know what this looks like washed and dried, if it's something that someday is going to be washed and dried. That's number one. Number two, I want to know, is this going to fade? Is it going to shrink? Is it going to bleed a lot of color? This one left a little bit of color in the water, but not bad. So once I washed and dried it, I knew with confidence I could pair it with this fabric. And then in the future, this item could be washed without any issue. So Jeanette makes her own starch. Oh, good for you. I'm too lazy for that. I like to I like to buy the pre-made. Let's see. Yes, I see my friend Dawn asked, what blade would I use? You know, you could use a standard fabric blade. However, the rotary cutting blade that they designed for the scan and cut for what they like to call tricky materials, to me, almost every material is tricky. So I use that rotary cutting blade for almost everything. To me, it's just such a game changer. All right. Hey, Babette, good to see you here today. Fabiola almost always starches. Lisa uses Best Press. Yep, that's what I use. Hey, Marianne. Oh, you got the circular attachment. Good for you. All right, I'm breezing into the earlier comments here to see if I missed any of your questions. So I think you'd agree that was a pretty quick project. Didn't even take us an hour, and we've got that thing entirely stitched. So I think that's pretty good. Let's see if I missed any other of your questions. Okay, Fabiola has a good one here. She says she's read that if the size of the circle is an odd number and the length of the decorative stitch is also an odd number, that the ends will match up. It seems to be true. Ooh, that's interesting. Well, I have to tell you that I don't have it here handy, but the Brothers circular attachment comes with a protractor. I'm going to call it a gizmo, because anything that's high math is low on my totem pole, because math and me are not really like linked in together. But they gave that protractor as part of it so that you could do a test of a decorative stitch and then determine what size circle you would need to make that match at the end. And trust me, I've tried. But when you're working with fabric, it moves. It moves. Even if it moves a 1/16 of an inch, it can make a difference. So if that works for you, great. I'm gonna definitely give that give that a try and see if I can get that to work too. But so far, I have just kind of had a lot of fun making those, you know, pieces with added trim. So there again, I'll show you this one again. Oh, my bead right there. You can see how pretty that is. I like to leave tassel tail. So that's extra long, but when you're working with the cording foot, that makes it really fun to add a little bit of, again, extra spice to your project, because then all you've got to do is tie a bead on there and you've got, you know, a little dangling tassel effect. Circular stitches are great for garments. I've done like a blouse and a skirt where I completely, uh, you know, added circles all over and just did it in a contrast stitch. And yeah, I see Cindy said, what is Joanne making with the circles? Hopefully by now you've seen, we made a beautiful little candle mat, table trivet, centerpiece. You know, use your different holiday fabrics, and this could make a really nice addition to your table. Lisa, yes, the circle tool actually does fit the Luminaire. That was the machine that I was working on today. Although, like I said, it fits many machines, and everybody has an option for sewing circles, even if it's just using that thumbtack upside down, perfectly parallel from your needle, taped in place. And you'll need to be very careful with that though. You don't want to poke that. And thank you, Linda, for saying I have some of the best projects. I appreciate that. Jenny did try her circular attachment, made a sampler. Good for you. It's fun. You know, it's pillows are a great way to use the circular sewing attachment. I've made pillows. I've made whole big table squares where I've added other things to the outer edges. You can add machine embroidery, all kinds of different things. And Marcia says she washes too. Good for you, Marcia. That is a smart way to go. And Linda uses color catchers. Okay, that's another way to do two things. One thing is it keeps color catcher sheets will keep the color from transferring to another piece of fabric. It'll also show you how much color is coming out of that. So I like to use color sheets when I hand wash fabric, because then I see how much of that is actually coming off in the water. So, all right, add a cork to the thumbtack. Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. That would keep that down nice and firm. And Janice wants to know, can you use the needle in the center position? Does it have to be on the left? It can be wherever you want it. Just make sure that whatever distance you are shooting for, that you're coordinating that to your needle position. All right. And Jeanette likes rattan to keep color in the fabric. Yeah, that can work too. So, all right. I don't see too many more questions. So is anybody going to be okay with leaving early today? Class can be dismissed early today because we've totally finished our project in less than an hour. So again, I loved being here with you. Make sure that you give me your feedback, and please get in touch with me at letsgosew.com so that we can keep in touch, and I can get some interesting ideas from all of you as well. Okay, so thank you, and I wish you all a world full of pretty stitches. Bye bye.